Thanks, Hamilton. I'm really pleased that you described me in such kind words at the end, because I was feeling a bit worried that people were wondering what kind of boss I was with all this focus on your KPIs. It is absolutely fantastic to be here today presenting to you on women in leadership. I know when you heard Hamilton rattle off some of the things that I do, I know that you gravitated towards the Parliamentary Budget Office, didn't you? That was the one you thought, gee, I wonder what that is. I wonder how I can get that gig. It doesn't pay, so don't worry about it. I thought, not surprisingly, Louise and I are on a similar sort of tangent in terms of reflecting on what technology in this rapid change that we're confronting actually means for how we think about the workforce, how we think about the future workforce, but also how we think about women in leadership and diversity in the context of these big changes that are rolling through our businesses, our society and our economy. So I'm going to talk to a lot of the same issues, but maybe bring a slightly different perspective, and actually based on some conversations I've had recently with some of the CFOs of our larger member companies, bring a slightly different perspective on one or two of the issues which Louise has touched on. So, of course, we are living in a world of unprecedented technological change. We know that. We know we've experienced technological change for hundreds of years and we've managed it. But at the moment, we're just the pace of change, the significance of change, the scariness of machine learning and artificial intelligence and robots seems to sort of have given us the sense that this is different. And I think there is a lot that is different about it, but there's also a lot that is the same, and that we should be confident that we've managed these changes in the past as long as we think and reflect on what they mean and how we respond to them, and to the best extent possible get ahead of them. The adoption of technology is obviously driving really big changes through our workplaces. It's changing the way people work. So it's changing not only businesses and some jobs are becoming obsolete, but it's also changing the way we work every day, the way we manage supply chains, the things we do, the way we communicate. So it's big and small change all at the same time. We've heard an awful lot about job destruction. And I think that's understandable as people try to get their hands on what jobs will exist in the future. It is probably a little bit easier to look at job destruction and think about what jobs are going to be lost. It's probably an awful lot harder to think about what the jobs of the future will be, what's going to be created and what's possible, and in what sort of scale. And in what time frame. So I think one of the things just to remember is I think we talk a lot about the thing that's easy to get our hands on, and we can't get caught up too much in that glass half empty, because there is a glass half full story out there as well. But you're familiar with the types of jobs that we're already talking about and already seeing being displaced by technology. Routine physical tasks that require data analysis, things that we're doing in a predictable environment where machines can pick that up pretty quickly. McKinsey in its latest work estimated that between 10 and 15% of the workforce may need to switch occupations in the years ahead. That's a significant change, but I also think one that's manageable. They talked about occupations. One of the things that I want you to think about is the concept of occupations still going to be relevant in the future? And let me put this into perspective in the way that some people are now recruiting new employees. So I was talking to the CEO of one of the major banks last year, and he was explaining to me that the way they now recruit is actually when someone comes in for a job, they don't interview them for one job only. They interview them for 2 or 3 jobs, because they are so unsure about what the jobs of the future are going to be that they want to make sure that the people that they're recruiting are capable of adapting and evolving and growing with the business. This is happening in a lot of organisations now. They're moving away from people with narrow silos of skills, and they're moving to people who can demonstrate the capacity to move across an organisation as the organisation grows and evolves. There is a shift in skills that are being demanded. There's no doubt about that. And there are skills that are clear. There's a lot of conversation around skills like technology skills, science, STEM, all the rest of it. But there is also a real shift and increase in demand for soft skills. right? Emotional skills, social skills. Now, when I was thinking about this, I was reflecting back to the sorts of conversations that may or may not have been had a decade or two ago when people might have described why women weren't rising to leadership roles. And it went to the sorts of skills that they brought, which were all these nice, soft skills that were great in working with teams and all the rest of it, but when you really needed that strong leadership, be out the front, tell people what to do, didn't quite have what it took. Well, here we are, and I'm pretty optimistic about the fact that what we're seeing now is a greater appreciation of these soft skills, which, I don't want to generalise, people have been saying for decades are skills that women possess. So I think that's a really positive story. The future of our workplaces is all about collaboration. It is all about collaboration, it is all about communication, and that is also about technology. As we bring new technologies into the workplace, working with our employees to figure out how we bring those in, how we train them, how we manage the change, that is not something that you can dictate from on high. It's something that involves communicating, collaboration, understanding your employees' perspective. Again, I think history will tell you these are skills that women have had for a long time, and it's great to see, I think, that they're now rising to the top as skills and attributes that will be valued across the employee workplace. This is all about what we bring that is human to complement technology. When I talk to technologists and scientists, that's what they tell you about technology in the future. That's what they tell you about working in the future. The best work is going to come from humans working with machines, complementing machines. And that requires us to focus on what we bring, which is unique. And it's all of those things that I was just been talking about, plus creativity, the creativity to sing and dance, sometimes spontaneously. So I think that this is an incredibly positive story from a diversity perspective, because this is an environment in which diversity will allow you to flourish as a business. To me, these conditions are telling you that if you are a diverse workplace, you are more likely to embed technology successfully, you are more likely to make the most of it, and you are more likely to thrive as an organisation. And for that I say hooray, because we've been arguing the business case forever, and it is here right in front of us right now. So what does that mean? It means we should really try to learn from the diversity agenda that we have all been talking about for a long time. What are the things that really, really matter? Culture. Culture, culture, culture. Inclusive culture. Genuinely inclusive culture. One of the really interesting things from my sort of diverse experience has been watching organisations that have tried to tackle gender diversity for a long time with all of the right sort of frameworks and targets and all the rest of it, but have struggled, quite frankly, and then to see them embrace a reconciliation action plan. A reconciliation action plan which starts with culture, building knowledge, building cultural awareness. It starts from the perspective that you do not know the answers and you build your knowledge together as an organisation. I think in the gender debate for so long we've approached it from the perspective that we know the answers and if only we could agree on them it would be fine. And so organisations that have rolled through reconciliation action plans, I've been really amazed to watch how that's led to a more inclusive environment, and not surprisingly their gender indicators and their gender diversity has improved in lockstep with that. So culture is everything. It's everything in the context of everything that came out of Hayne. It is absolutely everything in the context of women in leadership and what we do in making the most of technology in the workforce of the future. Flexibility. Flexibility is really, really important in supporting diversity and inclusion. We all know that. I just wanted to throw up, this is one of the areas where I'm going to throw up a little bit of a challenge, and I think it's one of the things that businesses are grappling with at the moment. I've had a number of conversations with quite significant businesses that are actually moving back away from flexibility and people working from home and being out of the office, and they're actually looking to design workplaces that are drawing people back in. And it's because collaboration is king. It's because having people face to face and bringing diverse perspectives in and having them engage within one another and bounce off one another when you can feel the physical energy in the room is really, really important to their business models. So I think how we grapple with the sort of the tensions of that, of yes, people want flexibility, yes, they want to be able to live their fuller lives, but also recognising that having people in the room really matters, and how can we do that? And yes, technology helps, but we all know that video conferencing doesn't quite cut it, although I do like that as a strategy with my husband from time to time. What are some of the issues that I think we need to turbocharge? And they are issues that will resonate for anyone who's been in conversations around women in leadership and diversity. Skilling, and how we get the right skills and how we re-skill. For women who've had periods of time out of the workforce, particularly for child rearing, that idea of how you move out of the workforce and then think about making sure that you retain the right skills to re-enter the workforce has been something that we've been grappling with for a long time. Now there's another force at work to focus us on reskilling and how we reskill and making sure that we really embrace lifelong learning. And that is not just a throwaway line. It's about how we make sure we are building skills formally and informally throughout our lives. Can I give a call out to the students in the room? One of the things that I've been asked at other forums is, what does all of this mean for students and what should they study? My simple advice to you is study what you love and develop a passion for learning. And if you do that, you will be totally fine because you will want to reskill. You will be excited about reskilling. And you won't have to think about doing it as if it's some chore or something that will necessarily get you your next job. Another thing that we're all going to have to think about as employers and our academic institutions are really going to have to think about is the portability of skills. How can we build skills in one job and transfer them to another job and have them recognised and have people understand what that means? So that is really important. I think we're going to have to focus more closely on the portability of entitlements. If we don't have people in a linear career path where they're staying for 20 years at one organisation, how do we think about some of the entitlements that have been built up over time? Do we need to shape our thinking about that? How do we think about our social welfare, social safety net? We've seen this as a challenge for women in the past in terms of if you're in and out of work, how you build up superannuation. If we now have a world where people are going to be in gig roles, consulting, moving from one job to the next, where there might be periods of gaps between jobs, if that's the world where that's the kind of vision of mobility of skills, how do we make sure that that knits together over a lifetime in a way that guarantees that people's livelihood is sustained? These are really big questions that we have to have both at a workplace level and at a policy level. Finally, Louise talked about talent identification, talent retention. When you talk to big employers at the moment, when you talk to almost any employer actually, they're really, really focused on their employee value proposition, how they attract people, how they retain people. And as Louise said, this is not a one-way conversation in the way it was when I was first recruited as a graduate. This is now hopefully a two-way conversation, but possibly a one-way conversation the other way. For anyone who's tried to recruit lately, it actually feels more often like you're the one being interviewed. So I think we really have to get our heads around that, and all of the things that I just mentioned, skills, portability, mobility, flexibility, these are all things that are going to matter for people. But fundamentally, the thing that I am finding is what matters is purpose. And so organisations are having to focus far more closely and clearly on what their purpose is and making sure that the work that people do every day aligns with their purpose. And it can be a challenge, and technology can help you because it means that some of the boring work that people don't like doing can be done in other ways. But I would encourage you to reflect on what purpose means for you and what it means for the people you're trying to attract. On a positive note, I spoke about the fact that it's difficult to identify jobs of the future. I'll give you one example and then segue to what I think is a really positive story. My little anecdote at the moment is that anyone who's been in Sydney of late and been to any of those big high-rise buildings will probably have encountered at least a dozen concierges. I don't remember anyone telling me that the job of the future was as a concierge, and yet here it is as an opportunity that young graduates are flocking to in lots of professional services firms, to name a few. And I say that just as an example of who knew. it's difficult to get your hands around what might emerge as an opportunity. But one opportunity that does exist out there, and for every person who talks to me about all of the jobs that are going to be destroyed, can I just say anyone who works in healthcare, aged care and disability care is thinking the exact opposite conversation, which is where are the workers going to come from? In that sector, there are women galore. There is no pipeline issue there. And I am really excited about women in that sector actually leading change and thinking about how technology can deliver better outcomes for their employees and the people that they're serving in a way that's going to improve lives for everyone. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I'll leave that on a glass half full note. And I said finally, but I'm going to say one more thing, just to rattle it up for possible conversations over the Q&A. This is women in leadership. I think all of the things that Louise and I have spoken about is about diversity, and it's about saying that all the things that we've been working about so hard, I think are really coming to, hard for so many years, are coming to fruition right now because business really now understands how important they are, and that's a great thing. Just as we're about to pat ourselves on the back of sort of maybe having got to a good place in gender, can I just say when I have conversations with my 19-year-old daughter, who granted did go to a very socially progressive school, her generation and her peers do not define gender in the way we do. They don't define themselves in the way we do, and they certainly don't define themselves in terms of their sexuality in the way that my generation has. So just as we've got ourselves comfortable with targets and 50-50 or 40-40-20, get ready for the next wave that actually thinks everything that we've been talking about is just a little bit crazy. Thank you.